Next item is the Macon County Association of County Commissioners. And, most of you already know our board historically has been active at the state level. This year, I was actually on the legislative goals committee. There's running 530 county commissioners, and every year a small meeting. Well, back up. For those 530 county commissioners, suggestions are solicited. Basically, what is it?
14. There's 14. Yeah.
There's 14 on the. Yeah. But there's as Ronnie said, 14. Chose each year to be on the legislative goals committee. We take suggestions from all 530 commissioners potentially, and that would be, I think, in fairness, things that we want the legislature to do, or in some cases, things we don't want them to do. The biggest thing this year that I took to the meeting, I think we all understand that we're in tough financial times. The legislature politically has been very conservative, has cut budgets, and the fear that I had as a county commissioner, which thankfully our representatives agreed with us, Senator Davis and Representative West, was we did not want to see the state cut funding for particular things and pass it on to the counties. That's been a trend, as Ronnie can echo, and that's been a trend that we've seen in the past. And as I've always said, it's the taxpayers, whether it's if you're paying state taxes or local taxes, it doesn't help me as a taxpayer if the state cuts a particular program and still mandates it to be done, but forces the county to pay for it. As a taxpayer, I'm still paying for that. So probably, and Ronnie can echo this, probably the largest thing that we took all those suggestions. The largest thing that we probably discussed was there was a pretty significant groundswell came from Mecklenburg County originally to pass along the DOT things like clearing the roads, road scrapes, keeping things that you see the DOT did. There was a little bit of a groundswell to pass that to counties. And I think it was pretty well known that Mecklenburg County sort of led that charge because they have the budget and equipment to do it, but we figured a county like Macon that everything would cost us several $1 million. So we don't have the equipment, we don't have the personnel, so we fought that and actually were successful on it and killing that so far, at least for the time being. That, and just so you know, that's why it's important for us to be involved at the state level, because what they do in Raleigh does affect us here big time. So that would probably be the largest. I want to ask Ronnie to speak to that.
Well, just real quick, been to Raleigh the last 2 weeks. Yesterday we had meetings with the Justice Committee, Health and Human Services, and others. Just give you a rundown. As I said the other night, the short session begins May 14th. In the short session, you can't introduce new bills. But there's some things coming down the pipe that we're certainly interested in. They say the short session will be very short, 4 to 6 weeks, because they're all in election. Most of them are in election, so they get back on to campaign. What you can do in a short session is the money bills, the bills that raise revenue or spend funds. That can be in the short session. Bills that have crossed over, that means it's passed from one chamber to another. Bills that's coming out of a study or oversight committee that was put on hold from last year can be reintroduced, and constitutional amendments. The major issues that we're going to be looking at real close is teacher pay, education funding, tax reform tweaks, and Medicaid. If you don't know the history of the Medicaid swap, it's probably one of the best deals that the counties have ever had. We swapped half-cent sales tax Medicaid swap, which has rendered us, I guess Rory can give us that number, but we've come out hundreds of thousands of dollars to the good. Well, now that's being brought back up. So, and yesterday we heard the words on the schools or the counties doing their part. So the extension study going to be published by the Macon County Association of County Commissioners showing each county and what they've contributed to the schools. But the main thing that we're going to focus on in the short session is the ADM money, the lottery money. If you remember last year, the legislature basically done away with what was agreed to and put in $100 million in lottery funds toward education. What the statute said before that was 40% was to go to education. We're asking for that 40% in the language to be reinstored.
And given that figure, instead of the 100 million, that would be more like was it 160 or 180? I can't remember.
Yeah, about 240.
240. Okay, so
It's a big chunk of it. And so, but the reason we got optimism this year, Senator Brumsetter, who really was in charge of that, is not running for re-election. So that means that he might be more open to a change in that language. So, so that's one of the things that we're really going to focus on. We think that in 4 to 6 weeks, you just don't have it. The committee's already meeting. Like yesterday, every committee was in session. And so it'll be pretty much like it was during the long session. If you're not ready, they will leave you behind. So we're trying to be prepared. As a county, Kevin will have to go down in February. They'll retool the language exactly. The Justice Committee, as Robbie can tell you, any grants that's available, if you're lucky enough, fortunate enough to get a grant, you're very fortunate. That's being cut back. The DOT, the real problem now is, there's no secondary road money for counties in our county. In other words, you're not going to see no repaving of secondary roads. You're not going to see no paving of gravel roads. If you have a pothole, they'll come patch it. They do have emergency funds, but there's no secondary road money. That is troublesome, especially when you have the number of secondary road miles. We're going to still, we're one of 5 states that does it like we do, and we were reminded of that yesterday. The DOT is changing. The way they're doing business is changing, and it will be major to Macon County and rural counties.
It would increase our local budgets by.
Well, we sat down, Richard figured at one time, and we had the numbers almost double. And when you hear the words, what worries me as a commissioner, and should wear this board, when you hear the word partnership, find your pocket. So, the other, we continue, we was very successful. Kevin and his group were very good at crafting language to oppose unfunded mandates to the counties. Jane Kimsey, if she was here, she would tell you that that's very true in her department. But her department continues to be more responsibilities put to them. Now we're looking at drug testing coming up and what all that entails, and they really don't know. Jane will tell you they don't know. The director of social services, she talked to him yesterday, he didn't know. But, so there's some departments just want to be facing some of those things. Another thing that's a huge item is of course the cost of mental health services. Robbie's going to speak to that when he has time to talk. We certainly talked about it yesterday. I did ask Senator Legislator Dollar, could we send the bill and get reimbursed our county? That was a no. So, and of course the 911 funds, that ability to use those funds has been set. We want more flexibility as a county on how to use those 911 funds. There are more funds available. It still has to be directed toward emergency services in some way, but it will certainly give us more flexibility. Secondary primary elections, if you get the candidates who are involved, last year we had one runoff and it was like 5% turnout. What this County Commissioners Association and one of Kevin's group's goals that he was a leader in is only if you have a primary, second primary election, that just allow one-stop early voting sites to be open. So it would save our county. You think of all the precincts, 14 precincts, and the money it cost us. The general election in Macon County is, I think, around $85,000 it cost. So that could, those are some of the things. And Some other questions we ask, and of course Mr. Ball will get into this, is about charter schools and money that taxpayer dollars that are being sent to charter schools without no documentation of how that money's been spent. And Superintendent Baldwin, I'm sure will speak to that. The last thing that we're going to be working on beginning next week, I guess, when we go back, is reduction of detention requirements in new detention facilities like ours in Macon County. We did make some progress last year thanks to our legislative folks here that really pushed for some changes. And that was in the medical end of it, as Robbie can tell you. That was huge. And so there's other things coming down the pipe as that. So there's plenty going on. We did meet with Senator Dollar, or Representative Dollar yesterday, who is Appropriations Chair, about the mental health situation. And it's a huge cost for our county. It continues to grow, and Robbie will show you some paperwork. I did show that paperwork and put it on the screen yesterday. That whole world is basically changing. Our proposal is that beginning ASAP, that when the Deputy Trammell goes out and he picks up somebody who's going to be voluntary and voluntary committee, do not go to the emergency room. Do not go to the emergency room. You go to the Emergency Services Center, which we do have one. It should be staffed and available. And and with that, and once that happens, they become property of the state of North Carolina. That's some of the things we're going to be asking for. Are we going to get that? I don't know.
Or is it going to be under custom North Carolina that gets it?
We don't know that. It's not because we won't ask, right? It's all right, I promise. But, so there's plenty going on, but all in all, the main objective that y'all have charged Kevin and myself with that's involved and is to make sure that the unfunded mandates, that's what worries us. But during election year, we don't think we'll be seeing any of those. It's those off years that you really worry about those. So we'll stay involved, and we met some interesting folks yesterday. Wayne Black, Director of Social Services. Jane Kinsey is probably one of the most respected social services directors in the state, if not the most respected. And she will tell you that there's some things coming down that was mandated last year that she really has no control over. Asking her folks to do more and more. Who pays for the training? So when the county manager sees her budget, don't be shocked if you see some added expense there. So, but all in all, Mr. Chairman, we stay engaged and try to. It's hard to keep ahead of the curve in that place, I can tell you that. But we're going back next week again. So, but as these committees meet, it's important that those of us from rural counties certainly are there. And it's still a real problem, the basic real problem. These metropolitan counties in North Carolina have noticed the recession is over. I sat with the chairman of Mecklenburg County yesterday. But in the rural counties, and there are 80 of us in North Carolina, but yet those 20 counties have 5% more legislators than the other 80, but combined. So it's a real, that's just a number, that's a arithmetic deal there. So it's good, we got to keep vocal and stay engaged, and we intend to do so. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And if you don't, rural counties tend to get pushed around. One bit of good news, you guys know from the news, the rural center were disbanded, done away with, but the governor's legislature created what they call a rural authority. And Ronnie said 80 counties in North Carolina are considered rural, 20 are considered urban. And so representing those 80 counties, they put together a rural authority, and the governor had 5 appointments to that, and he asked me to be on that, and I accepted. So I'm the furthest west. They put a map of where there's these people.
You're the furthest from Hickory.
The closest to me is representative from Hickory. So I explained to them, we had the first meeting down there, and I explained to them, I live in that part of North Carolina that you generally take off the map.
We've been away from commissioners.
We're that far western part, and they know where we are at. And I appreciate the government.
Just one last thing we mentioned that we did talk about yesterday was the payment in lieu of taxes process, which is over $300,000 for Macon County. That process is still, because that's a federal situation, in first week in March.
We have a meeting with,
We talked about that. We hope that that's huge for our budget, and we hope that gets straightened out.
so anyway, I continue to be on that legislative goals committee for this year, so if there are issues that you think we need to put out, I don't mind speaking up loud and tell them where we're from. So please communicate that to myself. We're on time. We're moving into discussing the agenda today. Derek and I had a long conversation about some things we definitely wanted to talk about. And Mr. Leitner is next on the agenda.